Before he was a global icon, Donald Duck was just a sidekick in a sailor suit with a temper. But within a few years, he had upstaged Mickey Mouse. And the story of how it happened might surprise you. Coming up right now. Hi, I'm Dennis, and this is West of Neverland. If you like classic Disney animation and behind-the-scenes secrets, then this is the place for you. Today, we are exploring the origins and rise to stardom of none other than Donald Duck. Donald Duck's story begins with a voice. Walt Disney first heard Clarence Nash on the radio, where Nash was performing his odd collection of animal sounds and tweets and different kinds of noises. Walt was fascinated by his talents and quickly brought him into the studio, where Nash's first job was supplying the chatter and tweets and squawks in the Silly Symphony short The Bird Store in 1932. Years later, in the Disneyland episode A Day in the Life of Donald Duck, there's a great scene where Nash visits Donald in his office so that Donald can complain to him that nobody can understand what he's saying.
Yes.
Can't understand me.
Me, you fathead.
Oh, can't understand you.
During this visit, Nash rattles off a variety of quacks and chirps.
Well, listen to this.
Can't understand it myself.
And playfully annoying Donald with hand squeaks as Donald tries to make a point.
Stop that. You made me nervous.
Until Donald finally throws him out in frustration. And honestly, if there's someone that you want to just passively drive out of their mind, just do this while they're trying to make a point. That same quirky talent soon found a permanent home. In 1934, Donald made his first official appearance in The Wise Little Hen. A silly symphony about a hen trying to get help planting corn. Donald's role was small but unforgettable. He was a lazy duck in a sailor suit with a longer, thinner bill than in later years, who faked a stomachache to get out of having to do some work. This appearance in the Silly Symphony was short, but it was enough for Donald to make his mark, and the studio soon found that they had a character that they could build a lot of shorts around. After that one-off appearance, Donald was folded into the Mickey Mouse series of cartoons. It didn't take long for him to stand out. In the Orphan's benefit in 1934, Donald shares the stage with Mickey in a vaudeville-style benefit show.
Introducing Donald Duck.
But while Mickey tries to maintain order, it's Donald who steals the spotlight. His attempts at reciting poetry devolve into temper tantrums that delighted the audiences in the short and also in the movie theaters in real life. But one fascinating detail is that Story Department documents show that the Orphan's benefit, which was originally titled The Surprise Party, was already in development before The Wise Little Hen. In other words, Donald may have been intended to debut by upstaging Mickey from the very beginning. By the time Disney remade Orphan's Benefit in 1941, Donald's look had been polished and standardized into the classic form audiences still recognize today. You can check out my full video on that one-of-a-kind remake of the Orphan's Benefit in the link in the description. This was a character with flaws. Mickey had become polished and careful, even a little bland. He was becoming Walt Disney's alter ego, and Walt protected him because of that. But Donald, he was unpredictable, short-fused and loud, and audiences really couldn't get enough. Behind the scenes, animators leaned into Donald's tantrums and built stories around them. His beak was a gift for exaggerated expression. His sailor outfit meant to reflect a playful, youthful image that also became iconic. By 1937, Donald was more than Mickey's sidekick. He was ready to lead. His first solo short, Don Donald, was a playful parody of Don Juan. Set in Mexico, Donald woos a fiery duck named Donna, showering her with serenades and bravado. Though Donna would quickly evolve into Daisy Duck, this was Donald's first step into starring roles of his own. Not long after, Donald's supporting cast grew. His nephews, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, made their animated debut in 1937. These characters were lifted directly from the Carl Barks comics. These comics themselves became hugely popular, introducing not only the nephews, but other characters like Scrooge McDuck, who would later find his way into Disney's shorts and features.
Now out, out, out.
On screen, the nephews became perfect foils for Donald's temper. Stories now centered around his exasperated attempts at being a guardian for the three little nephews, while they gleefully outsmarted him. This era also marked the final refinements to Donald's design. Animators streamlined his body and gave him a shorter, wider bill and rounder proportions. These changes made him easier to animate in fast, broad action, while his face now allowed more subtle expressions. By the end of the 1930s, Donald looked essentially like the character we recognize today. By the early 1940s, Donald was no longer Mickey's understudy. He had become Disney's most bankable star. In fact, he appeared in more cartoons during this era than Mickey and Goofy combined. His flaws made him relatable. His temper made him funny. And in a world growing more chaotic, audiences connected with a character who could lose his cool so spectacularly. All of that set the stage for Donald's defining role in the wartime years. When the United States entered World War II, Donald Duck enlisted right alongside everyone else. The government needed ways to communicate with the public, and Donald was drafted as the everyman soldier and taxpayer. In the short, The New Spirit in 1942, Donald explained the importance of paying income taxes to support the war effort. This short reached tens of millions of Americans and was credited with boosting tax compliance at a critical moment. In shorts like The Vanishing Private in 1942 and Fall Out, Fall In 1943, he was the frustrated foot soldier grappling with military life. Then came Der Fuhrer's Face in 1943, where Donald dreams of life in Nazi Germany, or has a nightmare about it.
What's that you say, Schweinhund?
The cartoon not only earned him an Academy Award, it also produced a hit song of the same name. Spike Jonze's recording of Der Fuhrer's Face, released just before the short hit theaters, became a sensation. With every shouted Heil, the band answered with a loud raspberry.
Wie Heil! Heil! Right in the Führer's face.
Much like Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf had done in the 1930s, the song captured the mood of the moment and gave audiences a way to laugh at a frightening world.
Wie Heil! Heil! Right in Herr Goebbels' face.
Throughout these years, Donald appeared in more wartime shorts than any other Disney character. While Mickey became too idealized to serve in these roles, Donald's temper and vulnerability made him the perfect stand-in for the average man caught up in the chaos of war. He got angry, he got scared, but he pushed through, qualities that resonated deeply with audiences on the home front. By the mid-1940s, Donald wasn't just a cartoon character, he was a national symbol.
Am I glad to be a citizen of the United States of America?
His popularity soared so high, Mickey Mouse was no longer the studio's most prominent star. By the way, if you're curious about my sources, I've linked to them in the description below. But even while Donald was serving as America's everyman soldier on the home front, he was also being promoted abroad as an ambassador of goodwill. In 1941, Walt Disney and a team of artists traveled to South America on a goodwill tour sponsored in part by the U.S. government. The goal was to strengthen ties with Latin American countries during the war, and Disney's characters were seen as the ideal ambassadors. The result was two feature films, Saludos Amigos in 1942 and The Three Caballeros in 1944. And who was the chosen star? Not Mickey Mouse, but Donald Duck. In Saludos Amigos, Donald explored the cultures of South America alongside Jose Carioca, a suave Brazilian parrot who became a breakout character in his own right. Just 2 years later, The Three Caballeros expanded the concept, teaming Donald with Jose and Pechito Pistoles, a pistol-wielding rooster from Mexico. The film blended animation with live action in colorful, surreal musical sequences that showcased the sights and sounds of Latin America. These films weren't just curiosities of the war years, they highlighted Donald's global appeal. The Caballeros weren't quite finished yet either, though. In Melody Time in 1948, for the musical sequence Blame It on the Samba, this time they were joined by the eccentric Araquan Bird and organist Ethel Smith. It was a colorful encore for one of Disney's most unusual and international teams. After the war, Donald's popularity showed no signs of slowing down. In fact, the late 1940s and early 1950s became his most prolific years of his career. During this period, Donald starred in more shorts than any other Disney character, firmly establishing him as the studio's workhorse of comedy. This was also when his supporting cast solidified. Daisy Duck appeared more regularly with shorts like Donald's Dilemma, casting the two in more complex and sometimes even romantic stories. But the biggest new additions were the mischievous chipmunks, Chip and Dale. First introduced opposite Pluto in 1943, they became Donald's perfect foils when paired against him in the short Chip and Dale in 1947. Their endless pranks, set against Donald's famously short fuse, created some of the most memorable comedic clashes of the era.
Blah, blah, blah. Who's your friend? Me.
Meanwhile, Donald continued to anchor stories with his nephews, Huey, Dewey, and Louie. These shorts leaned into a kind of domestic comedy, Donald trying to be the responsible guardian, only to find himself constantly outsmarted or outdone by their schemes. Between Daisy, the nephews, and the chipmunks, Donald was at the center of a lively ensemble that gave the shorts a richness that Mickey's increasingly one-note character couldn't match. By the end of the 1950s, Donald had headlined over 100 theatrical shorts, far surpassing Mickey Mouse. While Mickey transitioned into an icon of stability,
Hi, Musketeers!
Donald remained the studio's true star in terms of output and audience appeal, carrying Disney's short subject program through its final golden years. By the end of the 1950s, the era of theatrical shorts was winding down. Television had changed viewing habits, and Disney was increasingly focused on theme parks and television programming.
Let him do it himself.
Okay, Donald, forget the canon. We're all through with the sound effects. Come on out.
No, sir.
Still, Donald wasn't quite finished with the big screen. In 1961, he starred in Donald and the Wheel, an educational short where a father and son, portrayed by ghostly narrators, guide Donald through the history of the wheel. Later that year came The Litterbug, which holds the distinction of being Donald's final original theatrical cartoon. In it, Donald plays a careless everyman whose bad habits made him the menace to the environment. This was a message-driven short that reflected the shifting priorities of the 1960s. With those films, Donald's reign in the world of theatrical shorts came to a close. Over nearly 3 decades, he had grown to Disney's most prolific star, headlining more than 120 cartoons. Donald Duck may have started as a temperamental sidekick, but in the golden age of Disney shorts, he became something bigger, the everyman who could carry any story, and the character who, at least for a time, outshined Mickey Mouse himself. And of course, Donald's story didn't end there. From Carl Barks's legendary comics to TV shows like DuckTales and theme parks and Paul Ruddish's 2013 redesign, there's a lot more to explore. But those are stories for another video. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into Donald's rise to stardom, you'd love my video about the Barnyard Battle, one of Mickey's wildest early adventures. It shows a very different side of Mickey, one who wasn't originally meant to be the everyman nice guy he later became. Check it out right here, and I'll see you later.